So, are you connected on the owl?
Yeah,
Let's try
regarding
the
the
video.
audio, you can go and fix.
See, unable to detect the camera. Same thing as the morning.
Same thing.
Okay, click OK. Let's see.
So if you can fix this, this is where we were in the morning. Right? That's why we switched to the laptop.
Yeah.
Let me try something. Let's see the audio. What is it to switch them?
Wait, you have to change it to.
I want to do the test. Okay, the audio is.
That is the line. Okay. Oh, that's right.
Make sure the camera is board on. Is this one?
Okay, Joel, I think we might have to do the video through you. Fine.
No, we have it connected.
Disconnect.
I 100% agree. I've tried to get.
Help you guys.
I told like to get them off. I told like to get like get your mouse over here.
I think the reverberations.
Yes, Ah.
You want to play audio and see?
I'm trying to see like if there is a test.
Yeah, let's just try the audio. You just go to the.
Which one?
You just go to the. We just tested it, right? So we just go back here and try one of the YouTube sites. Yeah, audio.
It is working. Yeah, the camera is now working. Probably it's dysfunction. I will raise a ticket for the camera and probably will get it fixed.
Yeah, that doesn't help us, but today, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, like if it is.
Okay, Joel, we are back to you are the same. Yes, it's logged in. I'm logged in. Yeah. And yeah, let me, okay. Right.
I'll log in and then I'll pin this and pin the dates.
Okay,
And then we'll see if it works.
okay.
Me too.
We got our fingers,
I'm-
toes.
I'm going to test the sound, Joel, now, and if and the sharing, and then the video has to go through you. Yes. Video.
Spot on. Just that one is done. The speaker video. So if anybody wants to blow him up and see him big, they can. But go there.
All right. Mojeri, it's working, right?
Yeah, but like if you want to like increase the volume as well, it can definitely be louder than this.
Sorry?
The volume if you want to increase it.
Yeah, it's not yet time for that, but.
Yeah,
yeah,
just you know. Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
There, we are hearing it, so
Cool.
that's fine. What I will do is, I'll now share this one. Joel, you should see the shared screen. The sound is working. Now it's your camera. And you're recording, right, Joel?
Yeah, if it is third, I'm gonna.
It's, I think when you start it, it records automatically.
Okay.
Are you seeing this? Is it sharing, Joel? Not yet. Oh, it is sharing. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Is it showing that I'm sharing screen? No? I'm in the Stueck Lecture Zoom thing, right? Yeah. I see you have joined in. Says I'm sharing the screen, but are you seeing it? No?
It helps if I have to plug the camera.
The cable is still out, yeah.
Yeah.
Go by seconds again.
Yeah.
Feel like,
No, let's.
okay, no problem. Frank, because like probably the, the setting from the laptop it is well.
No, this is their local machine.
Yeah, I know, like
Yeah.
probably the setting of the, if you open settings and go to
Okay. so-
privacy and see like
Yeah.
if the camera is working or open down, privacy. No, like, I mean, go back. Setting here, this one. Open privacy.
Privacy.
Yeah,
Where is that?
privacy. Go to the camera.
Yeah.
In the privacy setup here, go down. In this one, go down. It's a camera.
I think we'll make that. So with that, no further ado, and I did want to get, sorry, one more thing about engineers without borders. As part of the celebration of that 20th year, they're gonna have a gala at homecoming planned for Thursday night before homecoming. And we're hopefully that'll be a really exceptional event, that really kicks off that 20 years of celebration, 20 years of impact, 20 years of changing the world. And with that, our speaker today is Mojeri Coker, comes to us from Chicago today, but he's gonna tell you the story behind all that.
Thank you, Dr. Birkin, for the warm welcome, and thank you all for welcoming me here today. I'm extremely excited to share my story, and it's been a major pleasure to hear a lot of your stories as well. First of all, off the bat, I just want to get the elephant out of the room. I was attempting a under the legs, behind the back 50-point Aaron Gordon dunk on a lowered rim, and I ended up spraining my pinky toe. So that's what situation is going on here. But you know, whether or not the dunk went through, I'll leave that up to your interpretation. But yes, my name is Mojeri Coker, from Chicago, and I am a filmmaker, as Dr. Birkin mentioned. And essentially what we are sharing here today, what you see here is a snippet from my documentary called Pipe Dreams, and it tells the story of how a villager in Kenya embarked on a 20-year journey to save his village from a 50-year drought. So I'm just going to show a quick trailer from the doc, and then we'll get more into it.
Rain doesn't come the way it's supposed to be.
He asked me, why are you worried about other people and you'll never miss water? This is what other people face day in, day out. He was like, oh, you are a young man, you don't know life. Bullshit. I don't care whatever time it will take, but I know one day I will make it. I will sink a borehole here, supply people with water, and you will see.
So whenever I have these screening events or discussions, I find that there are three questions that usually are my most frequently asked. And the first one is, how did you get involved with this story? How did you come to meet Silvester, who's the main subject of the documentary? Um, and I would love to say that it was some sort of, you know, divine intervention moment that was just a spark of creativity that was generated. But I respond to that question with another question, which is, has anyone here ever done an escape room before? Yeah, yeah. Did you end up escaping?
No.
Ah, okay. Well, maybe you did because you're here today. So I mean, but yeah, so I used to work at an escape room, and I promise that this all does connect. But I worked at an escape room, and at the time I was a young fledgling filmmaker, and I was basically talking to anybody who was breathing about all my aspirations in the film industry. Huge comic book nerd. My dad was a huge Star Wars guy, is a huge Star Wars guy, huge Avengers guy. Still butt heads a little bit about the whole DC and Marvel thing, but that's a discussion for another time. And I would always talk to my boss, Mark, about how I had these aspirations to be a filmmaker. And he was fortunate and generous enough to give me an opportunity to actually produce some content for the escape room. So one of my first video projects that I made was actually an advertisement for our escape room, which is the Chamber. And it was pretty sweet. You know, there's like a couple locks that are attached to this sword in the stone, and you go through the whole puzzle and everything like that. So, you know, at that point, I was like, well, now I'm a certified filmmaker and everything. So it was really cool to see there. And I just really started my journey as a professional videographer in that sense. And then one day I was at the escape room, and then Mark asked me if I could sit down and just have a talk with him. And I was like, oh, this must be him telling me that the escape room ad was nominated for an Oscar or something. And he started talking to me about like the meaning of life and water in Africa. And I was like, all right, Mark, like, I think we have another group coming in, so you're going to want to probably expedite this conversation a little bit. But he told me that his father was essentially helping to fund a borehole that was being drilled in Kenya, and was wondering if I could help to edit a video together. And I was like, sure, yeah, send me the content that you have and I'll help put it all together. And he said, no, do you want to go to Kenya and document this story? That was not exactly agreed upon when I first signed up to be a host at the escape room, but being the ever-loving storyteller that I was, I decided to jump on the opportunity because I really wanted to be able to help tell this story. And it was interesting because my point of view from this was, okay, let's dive in deep. And Mark and his dad, they actually, all they knew about was just their involvement. They're expecting it to be just basically a 10-minute video kind of encapsulating some of the effects of the borehole. For some context, over 2 billion people on the planet don't have access to proper sanitation. And that means those are things that we don't exactly think about sometimes. You know, when the global pandemic was happening, one of the first things that they told us to do was to make sure to wash our hands. But what do you do when you don't have that ease of access, that luxury really that we have? So I really wanted to explore deeper and to see how, yes, there were the effects of the borehole. Yes, there were the effects of how this village was essentially affected. But I wanted to see the human level, and I wanted to see, okay, even though there are these things that are going on, how can we document and how can we explore the more human side of things? So I was asking essentially, what were the different areas in which that we can share this? And just and this is Mr. Joel Kasilu. He is a primary school teacher in the village called Isani, which is about 3 hours east of Nairobi. And I talked to Mr. Kasilu. He was my first interviewee, and I told him how there are all of these terrible things that are going on in the village. On average, students are walking about 8 hours a day searching for water. And if they find a well, it could be potentially already dried up, and then they would have to walk some more. And then not being able to have access to education because they're spending all of their time searching for water will then mean that they're not able to get a proper profession, thus continuing the cycle of poverty. So the lens that I wanted to portray was more of a vision of hope, because I said, now that this has taken place, what is it that everybody in your village would do when facing these moments of devastation? How would you entertain yourselves? How would you essentially explore culture in a way that shows that your lives don't entirely just revolve around water? So Mr. Kasilu looked at me in my eyes and he said, well, entertainment is for rich people and our lives entirely revolve around water. That awkward silence, unfortunately, I did not have the luxury of sharing with a group of people. And literally on the cutting room floor, you can hear that silence as I was trying not to break down in that moment. Because I essentially brought in my own version of the story that I wanted to tell, not knowing and not just directly asking themselves how they were experiencing things. So it was at that point where I just really felt ashamed, essentially, because I was looking at these people going through such terrible, terrible travesties when my aspirations in life were to just make the next Avengers movie. So it was with that where I decided at that point that I actually was not going to become a filmmaker anymore. And initially, fun fact, I was an engineering student. I know at the event yesterday, the awardee or the nominees and the inductees talked about different folks getting some pretty low scores. I think I'd probably have you all beat because I didn't even go to school for engineering anyway. But I was thinking perhaps I'll go back to school for engineering and donate in some capacity, because at that point I just really had no hope. I didn't know how my vision and my supposed gifts would be able to make an impact on anyone in the world. So I decided I would just continue to tell this story, finish the documentary, and give it to my escape room boss and give it to Silvester so that they could have it. But at that point, I was like, I'm going to need to figure things out. So I finished my interview with Dr. Kasilu, and then he told me that this story would then help the people that were in their situation, that it would inspire them. And I took that platitude. I was like, thank you very much. Went on to my next interview, interviewed a farmer, talked about his experiences and how his life has been different after the borehole. And then at the end of that interview, he told me, this interview, this story that you're telling here is going to help the next people that were in our situation. And I was like, thank you very much. I'm not going to be a filmmaker anymore. I think we've already established this. Then I go to my next interview with the representative of the local Isani government, and she told me, you're doing amazing work. Thank you so much. This story is going to help the next people that are in our situation. And after about 12 interviews, I was like, are you guys all like a part of some conspiracy? Because I'm really noticing this pattern. And then it got through my lightning quick mind in that moment that if I have this ability to tell a story on the behalf of others, and not even just tell it the way I see it, but the same way that Mr. Kasilu represented it accurately, perhaps I can actually create a tangible change with the stories. So it was the same thing that they were telling me. It just took 12 times for me to actually fully understand that. So after all of the interviews, I finally got to the heart of the story, which was Silvester. Silvester is the main subject of the documentary, and I liken it to how, when it comes to this story of pipe dreams, the work that was done with the borehole was absolutely incredible. It was absolutely life-changing. And we rely on people like yourselves here, the engineers, who can help create that tangible impact. But you might not necessarily know the deeper story behind the people that we're impacting. There's a parable that talks about how, it's called the parable of the sower seed, about how there are 4 different types of soil. And the seed itself is essentially alluded to being the truth. And the truth, the seed itself is never changing, but the 4 different types of soil are changing. And those different types of soil are representative of the human heart. So if the seed falls on stony ground, it'll be harder for the seed to penetrate. If the seed falls amongst weeds, it'll in addition be hard to penetrate because the seed and the roots will be tangled up. However, it's my job as a storyteller to be able to help till the soil, to help pierce the human heart and help engage with you to understand that what you're doing goes beyond what you think is going on. So to give the context of the story of Pipe Dreams and Silvester, Silvester actually grew up in a very, very well-to-do family. His father is a pharmacist, his father's a chemist, and he grew up in an area where they had a home in the village, and they were able to get water access because his father was able to pay for it to come in. And Silvester noticed this difference, so he was really no different from a lot of us in this room, except there wasn't a giant ocean separating us from many of these people who were experiencing severe drought. And from a young age, he had a deep, deep heart for the people in his village and wanted to be able to share his resources with his neighbors. However, unfortunately, Silvester's father ended up leaving his family, and then Silvester and his siblings and his mother had to rely amongst just themselves on his mother's salary. And that was what ended up sending Silvester into poverty and now being just like his other villagers. However, the thing that didn't change was his resolve to help bring about a tangible impact. He'd found so many different ways he tried to dig his own wells. He tried to essentially work with different NGOs since he was basically able to start walking. And he ended up coming across many different organizations and many obstacles. And he just so happened one day, he ended up going to school for information technology, and he was called out to a hotel to help with their systems after everything was shut down. And it just so happened that the person who was at the hotel was the daughter of this person named Fred Merman, whose other son happens to run an escape room in Wheaton, Illinois. And he was put in contact with Silvester, and then Silvester talked to him about his village. And again, his heart was pierced. The soil in his heart was tilled. And Silvester's father, unfortunately, ended up passing away. And with Silvester's father's other side of the story, there's other parts in the film that we'll get to. I don't want to give too many spoilers, even though I'm about to spoil it right now. But Silvester's father ended up not having a way for his family to essentially progress because all of his assets were being seized by his second wife and the other people in the village that were somewhat taking advantage of him. So Silvester now has access to the borehole. He has it. And it turns out that the best way to actually access the water in the whole village was on his own father's land. And this was the part in the story that, for me, was personally so moving. So I decided that I would, rather than tell you exactly what happened there, I would let Silvester tell that part of the story himself. So this is an excerpt from the documentary.
In the money for geological survey and drilling, I had risked to put like 1.5 million, and I've paid him for drilling, and trust me, a geological survey can say in your farm we won't have water. That is how I had faith that this thing is going to happen. He smiled, he told me, your faith must be big, because I've never gone to a side and when I'm holding this metal plates and I do like 3 steps, they have shown me there is water. This is magic. I told them, I worship a God that is alive. When he gives me promises, he delivers them. They had one point here at the farm. Piping guys, the solar guys, and the tanks tower guys. So it was like a beehive of activities here. Then voila, I went to open the tap for the first day. And that's how the borehole masters played their magic within a fraction of days. Yeah. We came to realize my dad's property has been sold like hell. Even there was a land he has given us somewhere for us to do like farming. It was also sold. As we are speaking, my dad's only intact property is this farm. The second wife sold the shamba, only the homestead fence like this is what is left. My father's second wife went to the court to secure succession documents so that she can own this land. Our plan is to sell this land with the borehole. This is the first time in my life I was shaky, because now this was my only hope to do this borehole, and this has gone down. What I want you to promise me is that Isani farm should never be sold, neither should it be divided. Back in 1997, that's when my grandmother passed away. My daddy buried my late grandmother outside here. And that year I asked him, you have this big piece of land. Why are you burying your mom just outside your house? He told me, when you grow up, you will understand. And now I came to understand. He buried that beautiful old lady there because you can't sell this household when there is a cemetery outside. So he wanted a be laid next to his mom, and that is what I did. This farm was done when he was 21 years old, the same year that my father's second wife was born. So my question is, did she build a building when she was in the womb of her mother? So that's why sometimes I look around and say, bullshit. This is my home. This is my father's place. And we can go heights for me to pray, to protect this. I'm not gonna let this go.
Bano ungu asua kukila watu athi kana kono kitonya tutethia na nutuona ti tubande miti ani tubande mboka
kila kana mende ichi kwa na mkalla mutumiono ana kwa anu kyote na ngoi chi rambwe eno na mbia thamba ne dia na ile kwalio kale kadake
kithima kino ikena atumie na ambaye kana allowance be kunyoki kuyamela nundu ene nonie ingotetheka nundu wa kithima ki
kisio kile kiata kisio na climate ya change. Banda banda ga no kwa to na no so kwa to tangi no to no to kini la go ngwe ni ya ma no bango kwa da ni ya ni ba banda ni be na to na ka no kwa na no kwa tangi kana vile tu gaji ni ya
4 months ago, he came to me.
Akwena nake ngukwati nzuki kilone naye.
Oh, I saw it as impossible.
Kilone naye kya wonete ndagu kwetu abakomiwa.
The reality that he have about
Water was coming out.
I went there personally. I was very happy. I found so many children there who are very happy about the water, about the borehole. The water has come. It's like coming back to life.
This borehole is our life. Me and my family and my villagers. It's our life. We have no word to say to Fred, but we are going to pray for him. He started a new life to us. The Mwami's family, that is Nzuki's family, and the villagers. Yes, we thank you.
His impact on the village is just mind-blowing. He is the village's link to the outside world. For 18 years, he's been working on getting somebody to fund a borehole for his village.
Wow. And you say, what is life?
Water is life. Water is life.
The last day I went to visit, my father told me, let that farm, kids of your kids, of their kids, let them come and cultivate there.
And please, my son,
just do something that will keep my name for many years. Everybody who gets water here, they don't say we are going to get water from Silvester's place. They say, we are going to get water from the late Mwami's home. Like a bushfire in this village.
If your father was still here seeing what you did, what do you think he would say?
and I said, wow.
The boy has done great.
So I had the pleasure of sitting across from Silvester and having him tell his entire life story to me directly. And it was probably the most impactful 3 hours I've ever had in my life. And he showed me what it meant to dare to believe. After 20 years, he tried to get water access and he was denied time and time again. And even when he finally was able to have the opportunity, it was almost taken away. And it just showed me that there were so many levels in the story that truly, truly meant that you should never stop what it is you're trying to do to help make an impact. So after being able to go through this, I ended up going back to the escape room, but not for very long because I had a screening of the documentary and there was a marketing manager at the company called Arco Construction who asked me, do you want a job? And so here we have Dick Arnoldly as well right now who came out here. So thank you, Dick, for coming. And I ended up working in video production on the team. And Arco, if you don't know what they do, they're a general contractor. They build buildings, which are amazing. They build like every Topgolf in the country, #1 industrial builder in the country as well. So when I was there for about 2 weeks, and somebody told me, if you ever have any ideas, the partners are more than willing to hear ideas from everybody. And I said, well, I don't know anything about building buildings, but I just made this documentary in Kenya. And then they said, oh yeah, Joe, he does a lot of work with impactful charity work. And I said, all right, maybe I'll share the doc with Joe. So I showed him a trailer of the film, and then he looked at me and he said, you made this. And I was like, yes. And then he said, you made this. And I was like, yes. And he proceeded to ask me that 5 times. And I was like, okay, yeah. And then he said, I'm giving you my email. I'm giving you my wife's email. I'm giving you Dick Arnoldly's email. And I said, okay. And then he said, I'm giving you my email. I'm giving you my wife's email. And I'm giving you Dick Arnoldly's email. And then proceeded to say that 5 more times. So I was like, these are probably important people. So I was like, okay, sounds great. And then approximately 2 weeks later after that, our receptionist told me, Dick Arnoldly is in the lobby and would like to meet you. I work in Chicago. Dick Arnoldly lives in St. Louis. So I was like, oh, 4 weeks into my internship, and now I have the co-founder of this multi-billion-dollar corporation. Hopefully I'm not in trouble. And he told me about how the nonprofit group Microfinancing Partners in Africa, which he helped start 20 years ago, would love to benefit from having me be involved. And needless to say, at that point, I was very, very insecure about some of my film ambitions, as I shared with you all earlier. And I said no. So I was like, I'm not really probably the type of person that is going to be able to make that much of an impact because I'm not an engineer. I don't have all of these, certifications and fancy letters at the end of my name. But thanks for coming up. And I don't know if you remember this specifically, but then he went back, and then about a year later, Dick reached out again and said, this time we're not going to like send you directly there, but we would just love to have you involved. So I said, yeah, I would love to be there and do what I can. But in this period of time, I was also looking to continue make that tangible impact. So I was doing some smaller fundraisers on my own with the documentary, or attempting to at least. And I wasn't getting as much traction as I'd hoped. However, being on the water committee for Microfinancing Partners in Africa was very insightful. It was super great to see the different water projects that they were getting involved in. And then some more time passed, and I still wasn't getting the traction that I wanted, but I did start a small fundraiser. And when the first dollar came through, I saw that this has now become a project which is starting to do exactly what those villagers inspired me to do, which was make a tangible impact. However, it was still not exactly the impact level that I wanted. And I went to our gala for Microfinancing Partners in Africa, and I was doing an impact report and wanted to find out how much of an impact has this documentary made with some of the groups that I've spoken with. And when I was there at the gala, they were somewhat confused, and they told me, well, we didn't really have a water committee until you came in with the film. And I was pretty confused because I was like, well, no, Dick Arnold flew up and told me about this whole thing with the water committee. Like, what are you talking about? And they were like, no, you're probably going to have to talk to him about that. Then I come to find out that year Dick was looking to retire from the board of Microfinancing Partners in Africa, saw the documentary, decided to come back onto the board, and then showed the rest of the board and many people involved with the nonprofit group that we need to start getting into boreholes and we need to start providing water for people. And did exactly what those villagers inspired me to do, which was to use this story to help other people that were in their situation. So the entire time that I was on this water committee for about a year at that point, I had no idea. And Dick was telling me, this is your team. You need to help out your team. He was like, what do you mean you didn't know? So I literally was just flying by the seat of my pants, not realizing the impact that was being made. But he saw it in me, and others saw it in me when I didn't see it in myself. And Silvester saw it in me just as much as all the other villagers did. So another question that frequently comes up is, what's next? And with the documentary, I was able to have the privilege to actually go to one of the orphanages that we built a borehole for nearby. When I was at the gala and Dick told me about the impact and everybody told me about the impact, at that point we had raised around $200,000 to provide water for villagers directly from the impact that was shown in sharing the story with Silvester and his family and his village. Needless to say, my tear ducts were already running dry at that point, and now I had the privilege of going to the orphanage and seeing the tangible work, because it's one thing to raise your hand in a meeting and approve things, and it's another thing to actually see things for yourself in person. This sweetheart here also tried to steal my camera, so we have like a little bit of a beef, but we'll be fine. So it was such a major privilege to be able to see the tangible impacts that were made. And, I almost equate it to, I was telling my brother earlier this weekend, the free fall of faith somewhat. When you dive into something, you feel a little bit weightless, but then there's a bit of an equilibrium when you're going into doing the thing that you know is right. So to answer the question of what's next, what's interesting is that documentary films have seen a 142% growth in demand in the last 10 years, yet documentaries actually only make up for about 6.5% of the global film market. So as much of an impact as we've made thus far, I would love to continue making that impact. And what we're doing next is actually adapting the story from the documentary into a feature film. And going back to those main questions, which were, how did you get involved into this? What were your biggest challenges that you faced? And what's next? Silvester really showed me to dare to believe. And in that daring to believe, I was able to see very, very clear examples, especially from last night at the awards ceremony, of how when you're an engineer, you're a storyteller. These are the things that you all are doing, and you're making so much of an impact. And I am so excited to be right there with you to help tell those stories. And with the impacts that are being made, I encourage you to continue daring to believe. It doesn't matter if you're somebody who didn't end up, going to the best film school, who didn't get the best grades on your tests, right? What matters is just like other screening events where I've had, where they said, how can I be more like Silvester? How can I continue to make a tangible impact? And when you do all of these things, there is something to shining a light on a problem. There is definitely merit in awareness. But when you're able to focus the light when you're shining when you're able to focus the light from shining on a problem and spotlighting a problem, and if you focus it down to a single point, you can create a laser that can cut through steel. Because awareness is great. But when we can make an impact, that will last for generations. And when you do that, then you can start to see your pipe dreams becoming a reality. Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah, thank you.
For Mojeri.
Mojeri, how old were you when the guy from the escape room asked you to go to Kenya to document the horrible?
Dick asked how old I was when all of this started. I was 18 years old. So yeah, it was at the time I didn't think it was that crazy. And then I got a little bit older and I was like, that is really crazy.
Going back to feature film, or you going back to film more on location?
Yeah, so essentially looking to get into casting and fleshing out the final script. And then ideally we will be filming on location in the original locations with Silvester and his family.
You say this has changed your aspirations for films going in the future. Now that this has kind of become to all fruition.
Yes, great question. Simply put, what I named the session today was the return on impact of storytelling in the global water and sanitation crisis. So the ROI that I'm looking for is exactly that. How much of a return on impact can we make? Return on investment is great, and that's brilliant, obviously, but my goal is to see how much more of a tangible impact we can make with the projects going forward, both in the subject matter and in the capital raised towards these efforts. There's a great point that's also mentioned by one of your esteemed alumni, Gary White, who he says in his book, The Worth of Water, that when you're able to generate a wave of impact, that's when we can really start to make a significant impact in the world. And he's as bold. He's one of those people who I believe is also dares to believe and talks about how we can end the global water and sanitation crisis in our lifetimes. So that's my goal. It's a great question, sir. Yeah, that's yeah, so I am looking forward to the answer to that question as well. I'll go right here then.
Is it different from other types of documentaries that people make, or is there different skill sets? What have you learned about the skill sets that are needed to make a story about infrastructure?
And can you repeat the question just briefly?
Yes. The question was, what did I learn and what is the infrastructure, or can you actually repeat your question? But yeah.
Is making a documentary different from making other types of documentaries?
Yes. Is making a documentary about water pipes different from making a documentary about other subject matter? My favorite film director is Christopher Nolan. He made Inception, The Prestige, The Dark Knight trilogy, Interstellar. I've seen Interstellar 28 times now. And people call him a master of genre, yet I believe, and he actually says the same thing too, where it's not the genre, it's not the subject matter so much, but it's the human heart, which is underlying everything, which is the connecting piece. So for me, I really view the story as what is the underlying piece with Silvester and his backstory and his family. And I really viewed everything that the village was going through as an artistic way that everything somewhat like weaves in together with. So I really view any story that you're trying to tell as what's the human element in this, and then how is it expressed in the superficial layer that's going to be expressed, whether it's going to be about pipes, whether it's going to be about climate change, whether it's going to be about other civic issues. And then there was a question right here.
Is there an expected release date for the film version of this yet?
That is also a brilliant question. Is there an expected release date was the question. Yeah, I'd say probably around circa 2029, 2020, 2030 would be Michael.
How long did you film total for this?
How long did I film the documentary? So when I was working at the escape room, I was like, you know, making videos, freelance videos, and I did some quick maths. I was like, it'll probably take me such and such time to make this ad. And then I did some more quick maths and I was like, oh, that means if I'm filming a documentary at feature length, I'll probably just need like 10 days or so to film. Pro tip, if you're going to film a feature-length documentary, you may need more than 10 days. So fortunately though, we did spend like 6 months ahead of time to really get everything on paper as detailed as much as possible before going overseas to film. So yeah, that was the duration of time that it took to film. And then second question.
But on site, how long?
On site, like 10 days. Yeah. So it was like we had to get all the stories and then capture the exact window of the implementation. Yes.
Next one. Which documentary have you seen that moved you the most?
Documentary that has moved me the most. Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I'd say there's this one documentary called Minding the Gap. It's about fatherhood and skateboarding. And it's really interesting because you wouldn't expect a subject matter like skateboarding to really move you to tears, but it was actually nominated for an Academy Award for Best Feature Documentary. And I loved how that film was actually another great example of how you see the human element in there. And then the subject matter was really, I don't want to say it could be swapped out, but it was more so expressed through the stories of the people that were experiencing this. And at the time when I was actually producing and editing Pipe Dreams, I wasn't seeing a lot of documentaries that were allowing the people who were experiencing the things that were going on to speak for themselves. So that was a little bit of that, be the change that you want to see, because I came in with my own mindset saying, this is the story that I want to tell. And then things were, upended when I faced the reality of what was going on. So, yeah. Yes.
You said you were working at the escape room. Did you have formal training in terms of, becoming a filmmaker?
No, just self-taught actually. And if you see the animation in there as well, that's my brother. He's my producing partner as well. He's sitting right here. So he's self-taught as well. He worked with Disney for 5 years, and then we ended up collaborating together on this project, which was our first collaboration. But my dad would always film us when we were kids. So I always loved cameras and loved storytelling. I did speech when I was in high school in my first year in college. So it's essentially competitive acting and writing. And since at the time I was technically supposed to be an engineering student, I was looking at ways I could still express myself artistically and hone my storytelling skills. So I chose a few different events in speech to help me refine that. So I kind of called that my film school in a way. And then I ended up creating a piece called Program of Oral Interpretation, which was an event that essentially embodies acting and then pulling together a lot of different literature. So then I went to nationals, and when I won nationals, I thought I think now I want to tell a story of my own. And then 2 weeks later, Mark told me about this at the escape room. So
talked a lot about looking for that human element in the story and leveling that up to how is it affecting the rest of the story and the project at hand. I was just curious, in the short amount of time that you were there, how did you approach that challenge of being able to capture that human element in an authentic way?
So the question is, how was I able to essentially capture the human element in an authentic way in a short period of time? This also did go a lot into the prep beforehand. So I wrote a list of around 124 questions, I think, for Silvester. Everything from his like favorite childhood snack, which was chapati, it's kind of like roti bread, all the way to the biggest implications from the borehole. So there were a lot of things beforehand that we were like emailing over. And then when it actually came to the subject of his father, that was something where I told people if they weren't comfortable answering certain questions, they didn't have to. And when I noticed that in photos of his family, his father wasn't in some of the newer ones. And then I was like, if you don't want to answer this, it's totally fine. Then he responded with like a 2-page long email detailing all the events of his life. And then the last line of it was, this is going to be the best movie ever. So, yeah, it was very interesting. There were, other somewhat like legal implications in terms of like sussing through all of those things and kind of getting, because I'm not a journalist, so like I'm not necessarily the one who will have specific other areas of like correspondence or like, but I did have other records that I was able to, somewhat fact check and stuff. So, and then seeing the impact on so many different people that we spoke with. Also, a lot of sleepless nights was another thing as well, having to interview a lot of people. So, yeah. Yes, that was through sweat equity and through the escape room boss's dad who funded the borehole. So they didn't even know any of the story that happened with the borehole. So they only knew the part that they were involved in. And then my brother and I just got to work and then ended up coming back and then also spending a lot of time when I was supposed to be in engineering classes, editing the film as well. So, yeah. Silvester now is, I believe, 42 years old or so. I mean, doesn't look it one bit. So.
Absolutely, you connect with these guys when you're there for 10 days and interview them for 6 months. Do you stay in contact with them?
Oh, yes. Silvester, I think he literally just sent me a message before this screening. And we actually had the opportunity to have Silvester in the States. That was his first time in the States and in a plane. We had a screening at Howard University with their environmental science program. So it is really like my ultimate goal is to continue being able to just provide in a way that, the person who I want to make proudest the most, in addition to my family, is Silvester and the people who were involved in this project, because they changed my life just completely. And so a lot of people have told me I was a little bit crazy for kind of sticking in it with the long haul, because sometimes you'll see filmmakers and that will go from one project to the next, but I didn't want to treat a plight as a project. I wanted to treat it as a purpose.
At other times, you want to show students or family or friends or whatever. How do we get access to
Yeah, so Pipe Dreams is actually streaming on Amazon Prime Video. And if you want to have a screening for a group of folks, I'm always down to help do something similar to this. And then we're actually having a screening this evening with the students, so that'll be a fun time. But yes, it's streaming on Amazon Prime.
I know work with Kenya.
Yeah, cultural challenges. One of the cultural challenges that I faced was it was almost a little bit too fun with this process. So like Silvester was so excited to have me there. Everybody was so hospitable. And I was like, okay, this is super great. Like, thank you for the 9th meal you've just given me today, but we do need to actually like film this interview today. So there was a lot of excitement and everything there, but it was actually, because my parents are from Nigeria. So for me, it was like somewhat a little bit easier to kind of navigate some of these things because I'm able to understand some of the, hidden rules in a way. But that was probably, I would say, one of the biggest challenges is, as I say, tropical time. So they say like African time here, like when you're going to an event and you end up getting there like an hour later, and basically that's the same time that everybody else will come. But like African time in Africa, completely different animal, completely different animal. So we had to do a lot more kind of like, let's stay on track for this.
Your feature film releases, how do you plan on encouraging your everyday person that witnesses your film to get involved in their own way? Like how would you encourage people to get involved in their own way on a small scale?
How would we encourage people to get involved in a small way when it comes to the next feature film that we'll release? I would love to essentially incorporate like sections bookending the film, giving full context of the global water and sanitation crisis, and basically sharing as much as possible. And in those ways, I think being able to also highlight groups like Water Equity, which is absolutely amazing what they've done. I mean, Gary White and Matt Damon have really just paved the way in terms of all the impacts that they've been able to bring across the board. So I think for me, that would be ideally the way to just say it, like, this is the place where I think you guys should go. So yeah. And then of course, talking about the inserting a small portion of the story of the documentary itself and how it in and of itself went far beyond the intended goal.
Yeah. So thank you. That was just really helpful. Really enjoyed that. When did you release the movie?
Yeah, so yes, the documentary has been on Amazon Prime, I believe in 2024 was when it was put on Amazon Prime. Yes.
The vicinity of village that Silvester is. Have you seen other developments as a result, like NGOs participating more towards making a difference?
Yes. To answer the question was, has there been more development surrounding the neighboring villages after Silvester and his success with the borehole? The answer is a resounding yes there. Because of that, then they now have a borehole like at the school. There's another one just like in the village as well. And then neighboring towns as well, people are coming in as well, because instead of having to walk 8 hours, they can either come from like a 15-minute walk or so, and then those neighboring villages are now starting to get their own resources. And another question that I think that frequently comes up too is like long-term sustainability. And that's where I come and say, like, once again, I'm not an engineering expert. That's where I have all of you in here. And what I would love to do is just to continue spotlighting potential solutions that we can strive for to create long-term solutions, because in certain areas, you can actually tell from certain like satellite mapping imaging that there are places where water is being withdrawn. There is a surplus where it's being withdrawn from. But then now there are some areas where it's the reverse. So there's just an unfortunate complete lack of infrastructure in so many of these areas. So even the areas that have the surplus, we still need to do a lot of research. So that's why I'm so excited and always proud of groups like Engineers Without Borders, who are doing that amazing work, being able to help get further answers on how we can continue providing more sustainable water and sanitation resources.
First of all, I'd just like to say thank you, Mojeri. I think this was absolutely fitting for what this lecture series is about and what our students are doing now, and it couldn't have fit better. I didn't want to define for people that are in the audience might not have caught the reference multiple times to water.org and Gary White. Gary is a 1986 graduate from here, 87 master's, and started some of the work that he's doing now while he was here. Founded Water Partners. It's a microfinance kind of a program that brings access to water to people around the world, and then relaunched it, rebranded it when he met Matt Damon, and through water.org and Water Partners before, they've brought clean water sanitation to over 85 million people, and that work started on campus 40 years ago. So that's the kind of impact that a person can have, that our students have had. And I think you exemplified that really well. And this documents it. And I think that that kind of communication brings out what we're doing in the fall. So thank you for that, Mojeri. So please help me thank you. And the whole